Welcome back to the Road of Life podcast, episode 2. What are we talking about today, McKay?
Today we're going to talk about making decisions. It's carrying forward what we talked about from the first episode, how action is the antidote to fear.
Yeah.
But in order to take action, you have to decide something first. You have to decide the step you're going to take, the action you're going to take.
Well, you have to make a decision, even just that you're going to make a change.
Exactly.
That's the first one.
And decisions are hard. You know, both of us, like we talked about in the last episode, at this point in our lives, we're perfectionists. We're recovering perfectionists today. But
it's a work in progress.
As perfectionists, recovering perfectionists, we were very worried about making the right decision.
More, I think, making the wrong decision.
Yeah, more worried about making the wrong decision.
Yeah.
But on the converse, we spent a lot of time worrying about making sure we made the right decision, when I think the trick is actually to make a decision and then make that decision right.
Yeah, I think spinning your wheels trying to figure out which decision is right is a waste of energy. Like you're consuming the energy you have. Whether it so I think it's to your point. You make a decision. You obviously want to have some level of information. So get the level of information that you can get, but don't analysis paralysis it. Don't overthink it. Once you get the information, then trust your gut and go with it. And then everything you have towards making that decision, the right decision. Put all your efforts behind that.
And I think that was a new concept for us at this point.
Yeah.
Our track record had been to spin on decisions and make sure they were the right one before we did anything. The analysis paralysis, the overanalyzing, the overcomplicating things, when in fact the secret to making good decisions is to be decisive. It's just to make the freaking decision and then do everything in your power to make that decision the right decision.
Right. Well, we grew up thinking that you had to always make the right decision because being wrong is bad. Like you don't want to be wrong.
You couldn't be wrong in school.
Yeah. Or growing up in school and just general, like the way I grew up was we would hem and haw over every decision to make it the right one. You don't want to make the wrong call here. Like it's important. And I feel like it's just a lesson, unfortunately, that I just learned growing up was you need to make the right decision. Like go to school, get good grades, like be wise, don't make mistakes.
So that was a lesson you had to unlearn.
Yes.
In this. So this journey is a lot of learning, unlearning, and relearning things. And this was one we had to unlearn, that you need to make the right decision and not make the wrong decision, not take a wrong step. When in fact, if you take a wrong step, it's just one more learning. It's okay, I learned one way that won't work. Now let me go back and I'll make a different decision, take a different step, and learn maybe a different way that will work. And like we talked about last week, you're never going to have all the facts. You're never going to have a fully baked plan. You just need to make a decision. Be decisive. And the whole concept of trusting your intuition was brand new for me. Like, you'd heard about it, trust your gut. You heard it. It's paid lip service.
Totally.
But the actual...
I did not realize until this journey, till we started going on this personal growth journey and designing our life the way we want it, is that there's actually a scientific link between your brain and your gut. Like your gut actually is...
a second brain.
Scientifically, a second brain. Like there's a link there that I had no idea about. So that trust your gut, that feeling that you get, that's a real scientifically backed thing.
Cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so cool.
And that was never something I did. I never trusted my gut. I never trusted myself. I always overanalyzed to the nth degree. I never just trusted my intuition and went. And it's really liberating.
We played it safe a lot.
Well, that's how we ended up in the default life.
Growing up, I played it safe quite a bit.
Well, because we never wanted to fail. That's how we were taught.
Don't take risks, big risks.
Don't be wrong. Don't fail.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's how we ended up, each of us, living that default life. And thank goodness we were on it for a brief period of time each, because otherwise we wouldn't have met each other. But I digress. So we were where we needed to be when we needed to be there. But those lessons that we learned growing up, each of us separately,
Yeah.
we're in the process of unlearning those things.
I think you hinted at a good point there that I think we need to make very clear for folks is that our belief also is we were where we were supposed to be when we were supposed to be there.
Correct.
And so we needed to learn some valuable lessons, and we learned a lot of those lessons in the corporate world and living the default life, and we needed to be on that. We were on that path for a reason. And I'm very grateful for having been on that path and having had those experiences. I don't dismiss or speak badly about any of that. I was meant to go through that, and that was part of my journey, and I needed to learn those lessons and to experience some of those things. But for anyone who's now been on that road and who's
ready to make a change.
who feels as though they've had that experience, they've gleaned what they need to glean from that road, and they want to take a new road, then here we go. Let's talk about that a little bit. But I think it's a really important point for people to understand is that you needed to go through certain experiences in your life, and if that meant you were on the default life road, then so be it. And some people like that road, and more power to them. But for those who have this pull for a different road, that's who we want to
That's who we're talking to.
We're speaking to. So,
yeah. And so this whole element of trusting your intuition was new, and it aligned so nicely with this being decisive and making a quick decision. The best way to make a quick decision is to listen to your gut. Your gut knows better. Your subconscious mind knows better than your conscious mind does. So trust your gut, make a decision, be decisive, and then make that decision right. And you do that by taking the next logical step after step after step. And they often, because it's not a fully baked plan, feel a little bit like you're feeling your way through the dark, one step at a time. Yeah. But the cool thing is once you take a step, then the next step reveals itself. And then you're never going to see the whole path. You're only going to see, like your headlights, you're only going to see a few feet in front of you. You're only going to see another step or two down the road. But that's how you continue your momentum. You make those steps, and then you have the opportunity to course correct. Like we talked about last episode, we've made lots of mistakes. Yeah. Lots of mistakes.
We will talk
can't wait to talk all about those
We'll
mistakes.
talk about those and the lessons we learned. But I think it's also important for everyone to realize is that though you may not be able to listen to or you may not have that voice tuned in right away.
But it's there, not hear
but
it.
You may, if you're like me, I tune that voice out for a long time. And when you do, it's harder for you to hear it. But then once you do tune back into it and you start listening to it and building that listening to your gut muscle, if you will, it becomes easier and it's a louder voice and you can hear it better. And then you start to follow that more and more, and then you build that muscle and you're on your way. But it does take some work at the beginning to hone in on that voice.
And so when we made the decision to leave our corporate jobs and embark on this blind path in the dark that we didn't know where it would lead, except that we knew it would lead to a lifestyle that we designed as opposed to the default life, that was a really big decision. And as we mentioned, we were still in the throes of our perfectionism and our analysis paralysis and our, think it to death phase of life. So it was a very stressful time. It was a really big decision. It was a really stressful decision. And we didn't know how to make that decision. We were at a bit of a loss on what we were going to do. And it was interesting because, I don't know, less than a month, a couple of weeks after our company made the decision that they were closing our corporate office and moving us all back across the country, we found out my dad had cancer. And we thought it would be his last Christmas. A couple of weeks later. And so we got in the car and we drove 17 hours to the East Coast to spend Christmas with my dad, thinking it would be his last one. And that was shitty. That wasn't super fun. But 17 hours each way in a car gave us a lot of time.
It was still during the COVID pandemic. We didn't even have the option to fly if we wanted to.
That's right.
It was this is, if you want to go, you're going to get in a car and drive 17 hours in snow in winter. Yeah. So figure it out.
It was not the most fun road trip of our lives.
Definitely not.
But it did give us a lot of time to analyze and think and plan and And it was on that drive back that we started to really think about this decision through the lens of like our values.
What we really wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was Dad being sick, I think, that gave us the perspective that we really needed at that time to make that decision. So we could have either moved back across the country, farther away from friends and family, farther away from most of the people that we loved to keep our stable corporate jobs, or we could leave the company and live wherever we wanted. And Dad's illness reminded us that no one's getting any younger. Our parents aren't getting any younger.
It put into perspective what's important to us.
Yeah.
It made us really realize, what are we doing all this for?
Mm-hmm.
Like the corporate job, the level of success. Like why are you doing it?
Mm-hmm.
What's it for? It's to create income so that we could do things that we want to do and spend time with those who we want to spend time with. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, is there a better way? Because mm-hmm. this is actually driving us further away from those we love. Mm-hmm. So is there a way where we can still create an income for ourselves and be able to pay our bills and live, but also is there more? Can we now leverage that and spend more time with the people we want? And can we make a greater impact in the world? Because mm-hmm. though we were making an impact at a certain mm-hmm. level, when you work for a company, you're providing value to the world through mm-hmm. that organization, but could we be doing more? Mm-hmm. And I think that also came along with this whole kind of perspective shift, was what more is out there for us.
Yeah. And so that really was the single biggest driver of our decision. And so when we got back from that trip, that second 17-hour, that ride back, that's when we went back to our company and back to our leaders to say, we don't know what else. We just know that we're leaving. And as a quick side note, the very interesting part of that story is that my dad is healthy as a horse today. That whole situation was put in our path specifically, I believe, so that we could make this decision.
Yeah.
Because the minute we made it, everything
fine.
Turned around.
He was fine.
He started going, he got his treatment, all the results, everything started changing when we made that decision. And so that was just another kind of sort of interesting aside on being decisive, listening to your intuition and making the decisions. And then the last piece of that is starting before you're ready. We touched a little bit on that with the first episode of, you're never going to see the whole path. You're never going to have a fully baked plan. And if you wait for that, you're never going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so the whole concept of starting before you're ready was difficult for us because we're planners, we're perfectionists. We want to have everything figured out before we ever take the first step. And so our first ever coaching program that we created, we really embodied this start before you're ready concept.
It was a smaller version of the leaving your corporate job before you're ready. Mm-hmm. It was building the parachute on the way down. Mm-hmm. Like, we launched this program and we were just a couple weeks ahead of mm-hmm. the people who were taking group. It. Mm-hmm. And then we were building it as we kind of went.
Mm-hmm. But if we had waited to have the whole thing ready and
we
finished,
might still be waiting to launch that thing. So yeah, it's really, when you're making a decision, I think just tuning in and listening to your gut mm-hmm. and
taking the information,
but also understanding what's important to you. Mm-hmm. What are your values? What do you want out of life? And I think we'll talk about that in a future episode mm-hmm. of kind of that lifestyle by design and understanding what that is and what you want, because it's super important to identify what it is you want. But if you know what you want, and that's essentially your destination. That's where mm-hmm. you're trying to mm-hmm. get to. It's a journey, but along the way you mm-hmm. reach these certain milestones. You become a certain person, and we'll mm-hmm. talk about that. But knowing what it is that you want or who you want to become and your values are critical to being able to listen to your gut, tune into that, and follow your heart and follow that. Mm-hmm. Because, it's just the default life for us, we had tuned out that voice mm-hmm. and we didn't really know what we wanted or where mm-hmm. we were going or who we wanted to become. And it just became so much more clear once we made this initial decision to leave. Then we started to think about those mm-hmm. sorts of things.
And so I think the moral of the story is be decisive.
Yeah.
Don't waste your energy on making the decision. Make the decision and then spend your energy making the decision right.
Yeah, totally.
So that's it for today.
So that's episode 2. And happy adventures on your road of life, and we'll see you when we see you.